Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Dane Tittman. I'll be serving as your moderator this afternoon. I want to welcome each of you to this Spring 2019 Forum brought to you by Curry County Voices. Our discussion topics today are the upcoming Curry County Measures 897, 898, and 899. We're going to begin by listening to the format and rules for this event. I want you to know this forum is being recorded. We have a recording device right there to where I'm gesturing. This recording is going to air 3 times a week on local television in our county from now until the votes are counted in the upcoming election. The recording is also going to be available online, on YouTube, and on the Curry County Voices website. If you're interested in finding the location for where these recordings will be, please feel free to talk to any of our Curry County Voices volunteers. We'll be happy to tell you how you can see the recording of this event once it's online. In order to ensure that our forum runs smoothly, it is extremely important that personal devices, such as cell phones, be silenced during our event. Even if you think your device is already silenced or turned off, I'd like to invite you to spend a moment now, check your phone, turn that volume level down, make sure it's silent. While you're doing that, I want to share with you that Curry County Voices programming on Channel 182 is made possible by grants from the Rotary Club of Gold Beach, Rotary District 5110, the Gold Beach Rotary Foundation Incorporated, the Gold Beach Community Fund and the Oregon Community Foundation, and the support of citizens and nonprofit organizations in Curry County. Opinions expressed on Channel 182 are the sole responsibility of the person or entity expressing them, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Charter Communications, Curry County Voices, Curry County, or our sponsors. Now, here is our format for the day. We will be discussing each of the 3 ballot measures separately, one by one, in the order of Measure 897, 898, and 899. To begin with each discussion, I will read the question of the measure and the summary of the measure as they have been published by Curry County. We then have guests that were organized to come and speak to you about 2 of those topics here today. We're going to open up some time for those guests to make a 10 to 15 minute presentation about that topic. Once the presentation is complete, we open for comments on that topic. The intent for the comment portion is for audience members who wish to make factual statements or comment-style statements about the measure to come forward. We'll be bringing them up in order of ballot randomly chosen from our lovely little plant pots in the back. Once comments are complete, we'll open to questions. The intent for the question portion is for audience members who would like to ask a question of our guests who came to speak today. So if you'd like to come up and ask a question of those members, that's when the question portion begins. Once we're complete with the discussion of 897, we move on to 898 and so on. At the completion of the formal portion of today's event, where we have comments and questions, we'll then move into a more informal portion, where if we want to ask questions a little bit more generally or comment more generally, we'll be available to do so. Of course, the recording will continue, so we'll continue to make this a civil event. Many of you have already registered at the door. I'm going to gesture toward the back. That's where you'd like to register. If while you are listening, you think of a new question or a new comment that you'd like to make, please feel free to go to the back to ask for a new ticket or a separate ticket. Make sure that you do so. That way we keep this an orderly event. While you are asking a question, if it's a question portion, we want your question to be phrased as a question. And it should be directed to the topic being discussed, to the measure being discussed. When your number is called, we'll ask that you come up to the microphone here. We may, for the sake of time, ask several people to come and line up nearby where the questioner is here in this area. Also, for our first few speakers, I may be coming up to help you with the microphone to make sure that it's on and it's capturing your voice correctly. I'm here to support you as you participate in this forum if you choose to do so. We ask that your questions be civil and that you do your best to speak clearly for our guests and for our audience members as well. We may politely ask you to rephrase a statement just so that we're sure we hear what it is that you want to say. I also encourage you to consider writing your question down beforehand. I found that helpful for myself when I participate in events like these. If you write down your question beforehand, it can help you stay on track and help you clearly express what it is that you want to express. If anyone would like their question read for them for any reason, you may do so. You may write down your question, and you can provide it to myself or to any of our volunteers, and I will do my best to read your question for you, anonymously if you so choose, for our guests. As your moderator, I want you to know that I have a duty to keep the time for the questions from the audience and answers and statements from our guests. I ask that guests and audience members respect our rules of our forum and the directions I'm sharing with you. Our volunteer, right here, this gentleman, if he's going to hold up some colored paper there, he's actually going to do that right now so you can see colored paper like that. That colored paper is going to help us keep on track. Yellow means you're kind of nearing the end of your time for your question or your comment. Red means it's time to please wrap up your point that you're making and try to bring it to a close. Signs are also available for our guests as well, for our guest speakers. We're making sure our guest speakers also maintain that same amount of time in the interest of fairness and timeliness. Following a question from an audience member, so when an audience member comes up and they ask their 1-minute question, our guest will have 2 minutes to attempt to respond to that question if they choose to do so. It is my belief that if you follow our directions and the directions of our volunteers, this will be a civil and effective forum. We're going to begin with measure 897, which I will now read the question and the summary portion. Then I will invite our first guest, who I will introduce you to by name, after the reading of the measure. Let's begin. The first measure is measure 897. The question as written: shall Curry County be authorized to collect a transient lodging tax throughout Curry County except in the cities? Here's the summary. This is a tax on guests who stay in local hotels and other lodgings. By state law, 70% of the net county lodging tax collections are dedicated for tourism promotion and tourism-related facilities. 30% may be used to fund other county services. This measure may raise an estimated $602,000 for tourism promotion and tourism-related facilities, and approximately $258,000 for other county services. The tax would be imposed only in the unincorporated areas of the county and not in the cities. By state law, lodging operators may retain 5% of tax collections for their administrative costs. The Curry County Commissioners approved Curry County Ordinance number 19-01, imposing a 7% tax on lodging guests at hotels, motels, inns, bed and breakfasts, condos, RV parks, campgrounds, vacation rentals, and other similar transient lodging facilities for stays less than 30 days. But this tax cannot be effective unless the voters approve. This is not a tax on homeless people. This is not a tax to raise money to lodge homeless people. That ends my quote of the summary of this document. I would first like to invite our speaker on measure 897, Susan Brown. Susan Brown, please join us up at the front. It is entirely up to you. I'm sorry. It's entirely up to you whether you stand or sit. If this microphone is live, it's ready for you whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I'm just going to give you some
Yes,
basic information on a transient lodging tax and what it may mean for Curry County. As soon as we get the presentation going, we can get started. Okay, again, thank you for coming and taking some time to hear about the transient lodging tax that's intended for Curry County. So we're going to start with just some basic information on what the transient lodging tax, according to OR statute 300 means. So the transient lodging tax is a tax imposed by the unit of local government, which in this case is Curry County, on the sale, service, or furnishing of transient lodging. And then the transient lodging is short-term stays, hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts, inns, condos, even your Airbnbs are now are considered transient lodging taxable. So as the ballot measure mentioned, 70% of the transient lodging tax has to be used for promotion-related activities, or tourism-related facilities. 30% can be used for general fund activities. There is a 5% piece of the 100% that's collected that stays with the motels and lodging facilities as remuneration for them collecting the tax. And we have a lot of detail in this, and we'll get through it. So some facts about transient lodging tax. The transient lodging tax is a percentage of the lodging charges incurred by the customer. We hear a lot that people think we're taxing the business itself. We are not. Transient lodging tax is something we probably all pay when we visit somewhere else and we rent a motel or a hotel. It's a small tax that supports that jurisdiction's activities. The tax rates are set by the individual jurisdiction, so each transient lodging tax is different. Generally in Oregon, they're running from 2% to 13.5%. Most of them range in 6 to 9% in the state. So right now, there are more than 100 jurisdictions in Oregon that have imposed a transient lodging tax. That includes counties, cities, and I don't think there's any ports, although they have talked about that. Right now, every lodging facility in Curry County or in the state of Oregon collects and pays a transient lodging tax. So even though the county does not have a transient lodging tax in the unincorporated areas, those lodging facilities are right now collecting 1.8% because that goes to the state as a transient lodging tax and supports Travel Oregon to do statewide tourism activities. So right now, for this measure, we have about 100 facilities that would be eligible in the unincorporated areas that would feed into the transient lodging tax. So there's about 20 in North Curry County, there's about 50 in Central Curry, and about 30 in South Curry County. Those would be the facilities that this would be pertinent to. None of the facilities in the cities. The cities already collect a transient lodging tax, so they are not part of this measure. So a little bit about the impact of tourism on Curry County right now. So these are 2017 statistics. In 2017, we had over 1.5 million visitors that came to Curry County. We do have some 2018 numbers that have recently come out. So if we look at that, in 2018, over 1.6 million visitors have toured through Curry County. This number is steadily increasing over there. If you get a chance to look at the Dean Runyon, and this is where we're getting these figures from, you'll see that over the last 10 years, the increase is steady. It's about 5% each year that we have an increase in tourism in the county. In 2017, $132 million was spent in Curry County because of our visitors being here. It was spent on hotels, gas, food, amenities, shopping, recreational activities. And right now, or in 2017, $29 million was spent just on lodging out of that $132 million that was spent in Curry County. About $12 million of that was spent in the unincorporated areas of Curry County. The average visitor stays in Curry County for 2 nights. And for every $63,000 that a visitor spends in our county, it supports 1 job. Right now, for the 2018, 19.7% of our jobs in the county are supported by tourism. And every $100 spent by a visitor contributes about $3.44 in local taxes, just your gas taxes, your local taxes. It's interesting because there's been some studies on the impact of tourism, and I think that might be a question. OSU did a study recently through the Sea Grant program. So for every dollar that we spend in promoting an area, every dollar we spend in tourism promotion returns about $237 in visitor spending. So every dollar that's wisely spent from the transient lodging tax could return up to $237 locally. So this one, I'm just going to step back a little bit. These are some numbers that are actual numbers over the last 12 years for Curry County motel stays. So you see the first column. That's what was generated in the county for lodging sales, the total lodging sales. So if you look at it, you can see the trends that are going. In 2017, $12.9 million was spent just in lodging in the unincorporated areas of Curry County. Total lodging was that $29 million we talked about a minute ago. So if we had a 7% TLT tax in the unincorporated areas of Curry County, in 2017, that would have grossed $905,000. Less the 5% collection that the hotel keepers, the hotel lodging facilities keep for collecting the tax. So that gives us a net revenue of $860,000. So with that $860,000, it has to do that 70-30 split that we talked about earlier. 70% has to go to promoting, back into promotions for Curry County. 25% or 30% can be spent as the county sees fit. In the ordinance that was proposed, it was proposed that 25% be spent on additional patrol deputies for the sheriff's office. 5% for the county for the administration of the tax. The remaining 70% goes into that tourism-related promotion, tourism-related facilities. So county promo, which would be split 50% of the 70%, $301,000 to promote Curry County and $301,000 for the event center. Now, they still have to be, even if the event center has the money, it still has to be spent the same way the statute requires. Tourism-related activities. Can't be spent on support staff, daily operations, things like that. It still has to be spent to promote Curry County, bring more people in, promote tourism. Same with the county promo part. It has to be spent on promoting tourism in Curry County. The idea is to bring more people to the county, to have that visitor spending impact that we saw earlier. So the more visitors we have, the more impact we have, the more money we have coming in the county, jobs, the economic impact. A couple more points about the ordinance that was proposed. That there would be a promotions committee that would work with the commissioners, they'd be appointed by the commissioners, and they would work on the strategic plan for marketing Curry County, the travel impacts that are needed, the assessments, which has to be approved by the commissioners, vetted by the public. So everybody gets a chance to see how this money is proposed to be spent year to year. This is an annual assessment that has to be done. The members are appointed by the commissioners. We propose that they're appointed from each area of the county, north, central, and south, and 1 member at large. And that the members have a background or knowledge in promotion and tourism. We want members to understand how the money needs to be spent, the best way, the most effective way to spend the money. The funds have to be reported on because they are state mandated that they be spent on tourism and tourism promotion. So it's not like we're given the money and nobody's going to be accountable for it. It has to be accounted for. It has to be spent appropriately. Another committee as part of the ordinance is the tax review committee. And I think this is just as important as the promotions committee, because it's also making sure that everyone's treated fairly as far as the lodging facilities. If there's issues with collecting, reporting, and we have a committee members that will be reporting on how this tax is going to be implemented and collected and administered, and advising the commissioners on policies and procedures for the tax. So that's kind of the end of my presentation, except I wanted to throw out here that we're going to do 4 more community sessions on the transient lodging tax on the 23rd of April, 24th, 25th, 3 of them in the Brookings Harbor area, and then in Port Orford. Okay?
Would you mind remaining at this table, and we can turn the microphone on? Because when we have a questioning portion, just a little bit of time, just like that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll now open up to the comment portion. I have 1 ticket submission for the comment portion. That submission for the transient lodging tax comment is number 53. Number 53 is the number on the ticket. We have our commenter. And sir, this will be your microphone if you'd like to take a moment and give it a little test. You'll be standing right here speaking into it and addressing our audience.
Looks good. You hear me? I'm Bob. I'm against the lodging tax. I feel like Gold Beach is on its way down. A lot of the stores, things have been closing. This is going to be a thing that's going to hurt Gold Beach. By this tax, it's going to put us in a bracket. They're paying 2 now, and then if we're going to add another 8, that'll be 10, approximately. And that's going to discourage people from coming here. They'll pick places that are further north, that have more activities for their kids. I mean, we have hiking and biking and all that, but we don't have any of the big draws for the kids. So I feel like that it's like shooting ourselves in the foot. You know, it's going to be up to the visitors to pay this money that we're collecting. And I don't feel like it's going to help us.
Thank you, Bob. Next, we'll be opening up into the questions portion. For those of you who have a question for our guest is going to turn her microphone on. She's going to be prepared to offer a 2-minute response, a maximum 2-minute response, if she so chooses, to the question portion. I will be reading off the last 2 numbers of your ticket. I should have specified earlier for Bob. So if you look at your ticket, you have a big long digit number right there. I'm just going to read off the last 2. Pardon me. I'm going to turn that microphone on again. Let's see if the same thing happens. Please brace your ears. Testing, testing. Ooh, pardon me, folks. I was telling you that I was reading out the last 2 numbers of the ticket. I'm going to do so now. The ticket for the questioner that I have first up is ticket number 95. Ticket number 95, if your ticket ends in 95. Is that our gentleman recorder in the back? Okay. The next person that I will be calling up after he is finished with his question and the answer will be 84. So number 84, please do prepare yourself to come and join us up at the microphone, but we'll be beginning with 95. Oh, you are 85 and 84.
Thank you. I do have a few questions. I'll ask one each at a time. The tax, as it's written in the statement, is for stays less than 30 days. But as I read this, there's no description of what less than 30 days actually means. And it also goes on to say it's not a tax on homeless people, and I'm not sure how homeless is defined, but there's a number of people who do live in RV parks and campgrounds, and they stay for more than 30 days. But is that 30 days in a year or 30 days in a month? And if it's 30 days in a month, then that would mean for February's are always tax collection days on people who are potentially homeless living in RV parks. So that's my first question.
Is it working? Okay. So actually, that's a good question. So if somebody's staying more than 30 days, such as in an RV park, which many folks do, that's considered a tenancy, not a temporary or a transient lodging. So in those particular cases, like anybody who would rent a unit in a condo for more than 30 days, they do not pay the transient lodging tax because then now that is a residence.
Okay, thank you. And for my second question, and I may have a third, but I'll have to wait. We talked about the 70%, I'm sorry, in the presentation there was mention, and in the statement here, that 70% is used for net, for tourism promotion and tourism related facilities. You had mentioned that, or I understood you had mentioned that there was an ordinance written and that there were these committees. But we've had citizen involvement committees in the past, most recently the budget committee as an example, where apparently it appears on the outside that commissioners are not necessarily appreciative of what the committee does, and so it goes ahead and dissolves the committee and reconstitutes it with people of their own personal selection. So is it not possible that once this, if it were to be approved, the fundamental basis for the arguments that are being raised today to approve it, the ordinance would change, the committees be dissolved, and the authority be, say, to a planning commissioner or someone like that, since we no longer have county management or anything like that? Is that possible? And
Yes, it is possible because the commissioners can change ordinance. Now, ordinance is considered county law, so there's a process for changing ordinance. There has to be public readings, 2 of them, and so that gives the public an opportunity to comment on the changes that are proposed. So in your question, if they propose to remove the committee from the ordinance, then they would have to have 2 public hearings or 2 public readings of that ordinance and that change. So that would give the public a chance to comment on the changes. If the changes, the public comment was ineffective and the ordinance was changed, because the commissioners do have the prerogative to do that, there is a period of time after the second reading of the ordinance is passed that the public can then, if they're still not satisfied with the changes, challenge the ordinance through referendum. And essentially that's collecting signatures to force the issue back to the ballot, because this was what was passed for this particular measure is what we're proposing, what the ordinance says today. What's been passed by the commissioners today is the ordinance that we're using to promote the measure. So there could be a challenge that now that the measure, if passed, if the intent is to change the ordinance, then I think the citizens might want to find out why and see how to challenge that change. But there is an option to do that.
okay, and with regard to dissolving the committees
And that would be,
and reappointing people.
right, and that would be part of the changing of the ordinance, which, again, like I said, is county law. Once an ordinance is signed, that's county law. So if that was the proposal, would have to have 2 public readings, which are citizen input opportunities, and then if it's still changed, then you have the citizen challenge opportunity.
But that would be dissolving the committee. I meant about replacing the bodies on the committee.
Yeah, any change to the ordinance has to be put in front of the public.
I'd like to suggest that if further questions need to be asked, please do fill out a ticket. My guests do have the option, if follow-up questions are asked in addition to the original, they have the option to decline to answer follow-up questions, but ask that person to go back and fill out a new ticket. Our next number that comes up now, the last 2 numbers are 64. After questioner number 64 will be number 83. So 83, please get ready, and 64 is here. Thank you, sir.
So my first question is, if there was a tax, what would the benefit actually? I mean, I know what you're saying about the benefit, but I mean the point of thing is to make sure that the community stays afloat. There's 3 places that have gone out of business downtown, like the subway and stuff, but I mean, I'm just wondering, like, if there was a tax, you'd be paying more, but, and the other thing is, if the committee decided to overrule what the people say that they want, then, I mean, what could possibly, I mean, would they just overrule it for no reason, or would they have to have a real reason? Because it's about what the people here want and about what's best for the community is what this whole thing's about, right?
And I hope I can do justice to the answer, because I think you're talking in some broad economic impacts from the tax. So I can't, earlier with the comment, and I understand why Gold Beach is being mentioned because we are in Gold Beach. But again, this transient lodging tax does not affect the city limits of Gold Beach, because the city already has a transient lodging tax in place, which they use for the visitor center downtown and we've probably all seen the commercials on the Medford station for Visit Gold Beach. So that's what they're using their money for, is to bring more folks in to hopefully use places like Subway, the grocery store, local restaurants.
And then would the tax be able to get those businesses back in business, or what would the overall benefit be?
Probably not specifically those businesses, but what the transient lodging tax will do for the economy, if we bring in more folks to visit Curry County, they're spending more money in Curry County. So the more money that's being spent is going to create the need for more amenities. Might create the need for more restaurants or expanded services, which in turn creates the need for more jobs. So the idea is, if we have more visitors spending in Curry County, like I said, every $1 we spend in promotions could potentially bring in $237 to the local economy. So if we have $135 million that was spent in Curry County in 2017 by the traveler that comes through, they're supporting about 19% of our jobs right now. So the impact to bring in more tourists who are spending more money and more time in Curry County, that creates that local flow of cash. It creates the need for businesses to hire on more or to expand a business.
But would taxing more money staying at a motel actually draw more people in realistically?
Yes. It doesn't hurt the draw. Like I said, all 3 cities do this now, and it hasn't hurt their draw, folks coming in and stay at the motels. The cities are increasing every year just as the county is in their lodging income. Sorry.
Thank you both. Really, I appreciate the civility of the questions that are going forward. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I also do want to remind my folks too, again, very easy to fill out another ticket if you'd like to. Would you like to fill out another ticket?
I'm okay. I guess I don't have much.
That's okay. No, thank you, sir. Thank you for participating. And ladies and gentlemen, too, make sure, I know you feel passionate about these issues. I do recommend allowing the answer to try and complete the points that they make, especially for particularly complex issues like these. I think you'll find yourself and this forum served by allowing both parties to finish the answers that they have perhaps to your questions. And really do feel free to fill out additional tickets, which we do have. And you can also, of course, wait till a more informal portion at a later time. Our next question that we had up was number 83. After 83 will be our final currently ticketed questioner, which will be 66. So 83 is up now currently. If 83, please approach the microphone. After that will be 66. Seeing no movements for 83, let's move on to number 66. With ticket number 66, please approach our microphone. Thank you. I see our gentleman coming up to the mic.
I'm sorry, I just had a point of clarification. We talked earlier about dissolving the committee. perhaps that was not the right term to use. Dissolving the committee means eliminating the committee. That's not what I was referring to. I was referring to replacing the bodies on the committee. If commissioners did not appreciate what it was that the body decided to implement the funds for, just like the budget committee, they could dissolve, they could remove the persons from the committee and replace them with more like persons. Is that correct?
Yes, because the committee is appointed by the commissioner, so you are correct in that, that they could replace members that they're not satisfied with or they feel their service isn't needed. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have additional question tickets or potentially comment tickets for Measure 897 and our guest Susan Brown? I see one. So everybody ask if this is a question or a comment?
It's a comment.
A comment, audience. All right, let's listen.
Yes, I'm very much in favor of the measure 897, and I think it's a great win for Curry County because of all of the things it's going to accomplish with using the funds. 70% must be used for tourism activities or facilities, and we're talking about a lot of jobs being created because of the money that would be spent in Curry County. So it does support job growth, supports tourism, and all of these things for tourism development are absolutely fantastic for the county. But the other part of Ordinance 2 that the commissioners approved after putting this on the ballot dedicates where the money is going, even that 30% going to the county, and 25% of that goes to the sheriff's office for road deputies. And so that's the advantage of helping out the county, is we would get more road deputies. And 5% is limited, no more than 5% for administration. So I think with that, the county wins, but the tourism part of the county is really going to benefit. And it's total county, it's not just one section. The committee that would be appointed would be getting applications from all parts of the county, and once they are selected on where they would propose and submit a list to the commissioners for approval. But that could be projects in the north, Port Orford, Langlois, it could be in Brookings Harbor, it can be in Gold Beach area, all the rural areas. So very much in favor and support of the measure.
I see it. I see a hand being raised in the audience from additional gentlemen. Sir, please come forward. May I ask if you have a question or a comment about this measure?
This would be a comment.
Audience, we have a comment. Let's listen.
My name's Tim. I live in Gold Beach. And something that people may not understand, we have the fairgrounds, the event center on the beach. This has not received county funding for the last 25 years. So the money coming into the fairgrounds is from events, disasters. This is where we're getting our money. So some of this money will go to the fairgrounds, which has quite a bit of deferred maintenance. There's some roofs in need of being replaced. Now the fairgrounds serves all of the county, and there's many different organizations that come into this area utilizing the fairgrounds. This is something everyone benefits from. And I don't see how anyone could look at this tax and say it is bad for Gold Beach if some of the money is going to road deputies and some of this money is going to our facilities, our infrastructure in this town that we use to attract people to come here. So I would urge everyone to carefully consider what's at stake here, reminding you that this is a tax being paid by people visiting here. And anytime I've traveled anywhere and I've stayed in a facility, I have never looked, and I'm not a big spender, But I've never looked at that tax as something that was going to help change my mind about where I was going to stay or what I was going to do on that particular excursion. It may be different for other people, but it's just something the cost of doing business. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we're going to begin transitioning to the next measure of our discussion. If you had an additional comment or something extra that you felt you wanted to say about Measure 897, we invite you to wait till the next portion of our discussion. I'd like to thank Susan Brown for taking the time to discuss and answer questions here today. We're going to move between the two. Please feel free to talk amongst yourselves for a moment as we move to the next portion of our forum today. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to read Measure 898. First the question, and then the summary. Question: in your opinion, should Curry County tax goods and services purchased in the county? Oh, sorry, I didn't phrase that very well. In your opinion, should Curry County tax goods and services purchased in the county? Exemptions would apply. Summary: the outcome of the election on this advisory question will not be binding. It will provide information to the Board of County Commissioners while the board formulates policy. A 1.5 to 2% consumption tax on goods and services and real estate in excess of $100,000 could generate between $2.5 million and $3.5 million. Approximately half of the receipts would come from visitors and out-of-county shoppers. The remaining half would come from county residents. Revenues would be designated to specific accounts so as to ensure tax dollars collected are not being directed to county personnel and their retirement accounts. This proposal would not affect the current property tax rate. That ends my quote of the summary of that item. Allow us just a moment to get our presentation prepared.
Okay. I'd like to thank Curry County Voices for giving me the opportunity, and I think on behalf of all the participants, the opportunity to learn about the measures and bring some of the issues to the fore. I'm going to be talking about the Curry County consumption tax measure. I need to start out with a little background on taxation in general, otherwise what I'm going to say doesn't make much sense. So bear with me, I'll try to make this pretty quick and easy. There are basically three major forms of taxation that are commonly used in the United States. The first one is, the fancy name is ad valorem tax. It's basically, when it comes to what we're used to, it's a property tax. Ad valorem means by value, and everyone's familiar with the property tax. There were three measures in, I think since 2012, to increase the property tax in Curry County in order to fund county government and services. They all failed, and I think wisely the county commissioners have decided that not to try that one again, and so the discussion has moved toward a consumption tax, and that's the measure that's on the ballot next month. The wording on the ballot measure is kind of vague. It does mention, let me digress here a little bit and complete the picture. The consumption tax is normally associated in people's minds with the sales tax. So there are other kinds of consumption taxes, normally called excise taxes, tax on gasoline, alcoholic beverages, cannabis, telephone, cable TV, internet, all sorts of things. And there's also a value-added tax that's not really, probably non-existent in the United States. And finally, everyone's familiar with the third kind of tax, the income tax. So a little background there, we go to the next slide. Okay, here's what the ballot measure says. Dane already read it, so I'm not gonna spend much time there. We go to the next one. The chief purpose of the ballot measure is to assess the public support for a tax on goods and services. The summary specifies 1.5 to 2% consumption tax on goods and services, and real estate in excess of $100,000 would generate between $2.5 and $3.5 million in annual revenue. It's a little bit vague. It's not clearly stated that the real estate tax is, as I understand it, a tax on real estate transactions over $100,000 and not another property tax. So I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong on that point, but I think that's the case. Okay, the ballot measure discussions, as I've been able to discern, have focused not so much on a general tax on goods and services, but more on what we normally call a sales tax. And two kinds, a general sales tax and a sales tax on prepared food or restaurant food. Little or no mention of a consumption tax on services, and I'll get to that a little bit more, a little later in the discussion. Just a quick rundown of what I consider the pros and cons of a retail sales tax. Pro, it's a familiar tax. It's capable of generating a lot of revenue, generates revenue from non-residents, and has the appearance of fairness in that everyone is taxed equally. The con is it's highly regressive, and I'll get into that a little more later, which means it has appearance of fairness, but not the actuality of fairness. It would require a new county bureaucracy to collect and enforce, and that's, that'll be an additional cost to the county. It'll be additional burden on businesses, obviously, particularly small businesses that don't have a corporate entity that's already set up to collect sales tax. Okay. I'd like to give you a little background on taxes in Oregon, and this will fit in, put the discussion in context. As you know, we have a property tax, and this is a chart of the property tax as it affects different income levels. As you can see here, maybe surprisingly, that the lowest 20% pay a lot more than the other income levels, particularly the top 1%. This is what's known as a regressive tax. It's a tax that taxes lower income taxpayers at a higher rate than higher income taxpayers. Okay, next one in line here is the excise tax. Oregon doesn't have a general sales tax, but it has something that's a subset of a sales tax, you might say, which is an excise tax. Talked about that in the previous slide. Again, it's a very regressive tax. The lowest 20% pay 2.3% of their income. The top 1% pay only 0.1% of their income. So the lowest 20% pay an amazing 23 times more than the top 1%. And finally, we're all familiar with the income tax. This is the only progressive tax that we've got on the books. Lowest 20% pay 1.9%, the top 1% pay 6.2%. So you put these all together, and this is what it looks like in Oregon state and local taxes. As you can see, even with the progressive income tax, the bottom end of the taxpayers pay more than the top end. In this case, the lowest 20% pay about 25% higher rate than the top 1%. So here are the actual numbers. Property tax, low-income people pay 3.4 times the top income people. I mentioned before, 23 to 1 for the excise tax. Income tax is 3.2 to 1 on the progressive side, and combined is 1.25 to 1. So what does that mean in terms of sales tax? Well, since we don't have a sales tax, we have to look to other states as a model. Most states that have sales taxes have sales taxes that, as mentioned in the proposal, would exempt certain items, and those items are ones that are normally labeled necessities, like food and prescription drugs. A good model for that could be one of many states, but I took California as a model, It exempts non-prepared food, in other words, food you buy at the grocery store, and prescription medication. It's still highly regressive. Look, this is the eye chart. I have underlined in red the line that says general sales tax on individuals. By the state, it comes from the Institute on Tax and Economic Policy, ITEP, which for the last 40 years has been doing an annual assessment of state and local taxes, and broken down by each state. Okay, I took that eye chart and plotted this bar graph here, and see the lowest income bracket, lowest 20%, pay on the average of 3.1% of their income as a state sales tax in California. Top 1% only 0.4% of their income. Now, obviously, the Curry County sales tax wouldn't be as high as the California sales tax, which averages about 8.56%, I think is the number. It would be, according to the measure, between 1.5% and 2%. So I split the difference and took 1.75, applied that to the California profile, and this is what it looks like. The top 20% would pay 0.63% of their income, but the bottom 1%, 0.08% of their income. So you're probably wondering, why is the sales tax so regressive? It doesn't make sense, everybody pays the same amount. Well, the thing is that lower income families have no choice but to spend more of their income on items that are subject to the retail sales tax. They don't have discretionary spending to decide to spend on other things, basically. They have to buy stuff. The higher income families spend more of their income on services that are not subject to retail sales tax. Housekeeping, yard maintenance, legal services, accounting, yada, 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 long list. And that's why whether or not services are taxed makes a big difference in our dialogue about consumption tax in Curry County. Okay. Higher income save, and also higher income people save and invest more. This is more details that we don't need to talk about at this point. Do need to quickly mention the idea of a sales tax on prepared food. Nationally, people today spend about half their income on prepared food and half on groceries. So a sales tax just on prepared food would have a significant impact on residents of Curry County, not just on tourists, for example, eating restaurants. So what are the options? Quickly, a consumption tax on services would help level the playing field. There are a lot of cons on that, of course, because that's a very untraditional use of a sales tax or a consumption tax. It'll increase the cost of the services, and there'll be additional costs for county administration. Another option is a county income tax. Now, that's one that really hasn't been discussed. It's not been on the table in the dialogue, and I propose that it perhaps should be. Pros are it's progressive, not regressive. It's very easy to implement and administer. Little or no additional cost will be borne by the county, and it's easy and accurate to forecast the revenue it will generate. Cons, it won't directly raise revenue from non-residents, and it's unusual in Oregon. There are a few entities that do have income tax and local income tax in Oregon, but not very many. It's quite common in other parts of the country. Quick word on implementation. Easiest way to do it, and logical way, is a fixed surcharge on the state income tax. The state would collect the tax, as I understand, for a small fee. It's a simple one-page form. What you pay to the state, multiplied by the tax rate, and that's what you pay to the county. The tax rate would be approximately, well, actually very close to 13.5% of the what you pay to the state as income tax. That's a very well known number because the state keeps track, obviously, of how much it gets as income tax. And that number for Curry County happens to be $22.5 million in 2016, I think was the latest report. So, looking at the comparison of a sales tax and income tax, using data from ITEP and rate information from the county proposal, so it looks like. The income tax is obviously be progressive. The sales tax is regressive. And putting them all together, it looks like this. The income tax would be progressive by a ratio of 3.2 to 1. Comparison of what the top 1% pays to the bottom 20%. The sales tax would be regressive by a ratio of 7.9 to 1. So I guess what I'm proposing here is to, open the dialogue to other forms of taxation, particularly county income tax as an alternative to a consumption tax, which disproportionately affects lower income people. And that's pretty much it. So I'll sit down here and we'll listen to questions.
Feel free to keep the microphone on, just hold it away from you. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we open for the comments portion, where if someone would like to make a statement about this, they may do so. I had no tickets, but I do see a hand from the audience. Sir, do you have a comment or a question?
The thing is that...
Would you say question? If you think you want to ask
I would say like a comment.
a comment,
Okay.
then what I'd like to do, since I have none in my bucket here, sir, would you like to come up and join us at the microphone and make your comment? Again, comments you have about 2 minutes for. Just listen, make sure you watch our gentleman there with our colors. Please feel free to make a comment to the microphone, which is live right there.
Okay, so the thing is that we're trying to find a solution to make a budget on how to make the community have more resources. And the thing is that the committee would stop thinking like everywhere else and start coming up with maybe solutions that haven't been thought of yet. Maybe come up with some other ways to fund money. With like you go to a meeting and you all agree on it, then there's no reason in the meeting you have to discuss things in order to know what to do. And I think that maybe the tax income looks like a 2% increase, and it costs a lot of money at stores anyway. But if the committee could sit down and think of actual solutions that haven't been thought of by anybody yet, maybe, and I think that they can use their heads and do that, maybe there's other ways to raise money to help the community. Yeah, think about that. That was my comment on that.
Thank you. Do I have other comments from the audience before we move to questions? I see one comment from the gentleman. And after comments, we'll move into questions.
Thank you. What was mentioned was a consumption tax and services. Services were not really defined as opposed to any and all kinds of services. That would include things like massage therapy or physical therapy, which even if it were ordered by your medical practitioners, would not be something that's subject to be paid by your insurance. The tax portion, at least, would be paid by the individual recipient. It would also include things like legal services. And many initiatives in the state of Oregon talk about how unaffordable legal services are for a good portion of people here, even in Curry County. By increasing their costs for paying taxes on legal services, you'd make that yet additionally unaffordable for that group. Thank you.
Moving to the questions portion, I have one question ticket. The two numbers at the end of the ticket are 5-2. If questioner 5-2 would like to approach the microphone, questioner 5-2 on the tax consumption question. Seeing no one approach the microphone, which is perfectly fine. Again, if a person changes their mind or chooses not to ask a question, that's quite all right. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to move into the third discussion item for the day. Tom, thank you. Please allow us a moment, everyone, as we transition to the next topic. Ladies and gentlemen, for this next portion, as we've done with the other two, I'll begin by reading the question and the summary of Measure 899. The question: in your opinion, should Curry County be able to tax the production of recreational and medicinal marijuana? Summary: the outcome of the election on this advisory question will not be binding. It will provide information to the Board of County Commissioners while the board formulates policy. State law currently prevents counties from taxing marijuana production. In December of 2017, the Association of Oregon Counties, which includes Curry County, formally recommended that state law be changed so that 5 southwest Oregon counties, those being Coos, Curry, Douglas, Jackson, and Josephine, could tax marijuana production. Subsequently, Douglas withdrew from the proposal and Lane joined the effort. Following legislative approval, voters of each county could then decide whether to impose such a tax. Property tax rates would not be impacted. The state currently collects annual fees for marijuana producers. Under the county's proposal, the state would also collect an annual amount for the county in which each grow site is located and provide that additionally collected amount to the county. The revenue collected from marijuana producers would be dedicated to a law enforcement trust fund. This proposal would not affect the current property tax rate. At this time, we do not have a guest speaker on Measure 899. Therefore, there is no guest speaker to direct your questions toward. We'll instead open up to comments on this item. If anyone has a comment that they would like to make on Measure 899, please identify yourselves. Seeing none, I do have a question in the question container, just the same, even though we do not have a guest. So I suppose that the question might be simply proposed to anyone listening or to you, the audience, to consider. The number on the ticket is ticket number 65. That's the last 2 digits on the ticket, 65. Do we have a 65 in the audience that wanted to present a question or perhaps a comment? Seeing none, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the formal portion of our discussion today. I do want to thank each of you for coming to the formal portion and attending and participating. I very much appreciated the civil discussion that we held and that everyone listened to our guest speakers as well. We now open up to a more informal portion where we'll be using the microphones if someone wants to address the group. We'll continue to record. If anyone would like to make a statement about some of these or make a comment about some of these, even going back to Measure 97 or 98, please identify yourself. I see one from the audience. Yes, sir. As you come up to the microphone, please let us know what you'd like to comment on. I do ask, of course, that we continue to remain civil and limit your presentation or what you'd like to say to perhaps just a few minutes.
Sure. Thank you. My name is Bob, and I want a little more discussion on the TLT measure. A couple of things, listening to what was coming up, just appreciate the opinions and people thinking and taking the time to be invested in this is all important. And this is part of our local government, so we have to be invested all year, not just 1 or 2 days out of the year. Just for some information, this actual measure was brought by citizens, private citizens, to the citizens task force that they had going on. Then it was brought up to the county. So this was a citizen-initiated measure to start. Well, another comment was a question that was made about can the commissioners change their mind? Sure, they can change the bodies that are in there, but they cannot change how that money is spent because that is by state statute. So they can put Paul in instead of George in, but he still has to spend that money, and it still has to be vetted, and it still has to be handled through county council to prove that it can be done. A lot of mention was made about promotion. At one thought, just going through the thing, where the Sea Grant Foundation found that for every dollar spent on promotion brings in $237. So let's say only 10,000 of that was spent on promotion. That's $2.3 million coming into the county. That's going to help jobs. That's going to improve things. That's going to stop people from going. It's going to stop having our families move away because there's no jobs or opportunities for their kids to do that, to come up. And we need to grow because our population is getting older. At the Curry County, I think we're at 30% now, 65 and older. The other issue is we're running anywhere between 6 to 8.7% unemployment, which is double the state, double the nationality in Curry County. This whole thing is bringing in, so not just promotion, but this is also mentioned about facilities. There could be a facility you have, a facility that you need to repair to bring in that's dedicated to tourism. It can be done that, no matter where you're at in the county, you bring it into to the board and the committee, and they look at it and we get it done. The other option is that we can have a new event. Let's say we come up with a new music festival. Imagine what that attracts people to bring in and do that. So that's going to get a jump. And then hopefully get back. It's like the music festival up in towards Port Way. The biggest complaint they had up there is the people in Ray's we're so busy. We're selling out of stuff. So proper use of the funds and proper tourism and the fit in will help the jobs, it help the economy, and get the stuff, and it helps us all spread around to do that. So I just wanted to put that in there to see, and thanks for the opportunity.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think Bob did a fine job of modeling what a comment in the informal portion might look like. Does anyone else have a comment they'd like to make? Or perhaps they'd like to explain why they plan on voting in favor or in opposition to some of these measures? Just as part of discussion, I see one hand up from the audience. Yes, ma'am. If you'd like to approach the microphone and let us know whether you'd like to speak in favor or against of a measure, and take a few minutes, and of course, pay attention to our gentleman with the colored paper, letting you know when you're getting close to the end.
Let's see, this is against the, is it 898? That's the sales tax.
Measure 898 is the sales
And
tax,
I think
yes.
an important thing to realize about a sales tax being described as it was, as being regressive and costing the people at the lower end of income levels, costing them a bigger percentage of their income. We need to remember that our county runs a lot on what is spent in the county, and people and families at the lower end of the income level spend most of their money. They actually spend it. At the upper level, you have extra money to do things like investments and spending it on maybe trips out of the area, which is hard for lower income families to do. Lower income families will spend their money here. So it's really a benefit to our whole economy if we try and help them to have a bit more to spend. And lowering the amount that helping them have a more reasonable amount of taxes to pay is going to help them to have more money left over to spend. And it's really, also, even a small percentage when you're at the low end of income matters a whole lot and makes life a lot more difficult for you. And I think we just can keep our whole county happier if we can have it a little bit easier to be able to spend our money. And so, and for everybody, we do have a big problem in our country right now of the income gap. You've probably heard of the huge income gap that is growing. And it doesn't make for the healthiest of communities. And it's much better if we can all participate in activities and things that we need to spend money on. And I would argue for less of the income gap. And I think that, okay.
Thank you. Other comments or statements in favor of or in opposition to the measures we discussed today? Seeing no hands from the audience members, we'll begin to draw our event today to a close. Once again, I would like to thank each of you for taking the time to participate in our democracy and in coming to our forum to listen to what took place today. I'd particularly like to thank our questioners and commenters for taking the time to come up and stand in front of the microphone, stand in front of each of you, stand in front of the camera, and share what they thought. I'd also like to thank our speakers, who were Susan Brown and Tom Bozak, who came to speak and respond to questions from the audience. I'd like to thank the Curry County Voices organization for working to sponsor this event and for providing the recording services. We'd also like to thank the Gold Beach Rotary Foundation Incorporated and the Rotary Club of Gold Beach. But once again, most especially thank you, and thank you to everyone in our audience for participating in our forum. Everyone, please have a wonderful day. And if you'd like to remain, please feel free to do so. Please feel free to talk amongst yourselves or to talk to our remaining guests if you like.
Thank you.